Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Okay, so welcome to our Pro Book Club meeting today. And so we're going to have, and if there's any background noise or anything, go ahead and mute yourself and then unmute as you'd like to speak. So go ahead and manage that yourself. But this is a different setting than our study groups and some of the other trainings that we do. I really like to, I like it to be more interactive. I love seeing your faces. I love having your videos on so that we can kind of interact as if we are in the same room together and interacting that way. So when I go into my full screen mode of the presentation or just kind of the slides that I have, I set up the participants so that I can see some videos, but I can't see everyone's. And so if it's the situation where you're like raising your hand to speak or something like that, I might not be able to see that. So you'll have to just kind of, speak up to get some ideas in there. And sometimes I'll call on people, but again, sometimes I can't see everybody's names. And so go ahead and, we can navigate that on your own. And I apologize if I'm not getting to you, if you have something to say, but I really want you to kind of own that and manage that so that you can participate. Okay. So let me go ahead and pull in here. So how did everybody do with this book?
Awesome.
Yeah? Arjan, you love this one?
Yeah, actually, this is one of the very first book of self-help that I ever read, or as a matter of fact, the first book I ever read.
The first book you ever read?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know how I made it to through high school, so I kind of never read, but yeah, this is one of the first book that I've read and one of the most impactful book that I ever read. Simply because I don't know why students have not read this throughout high school, because at the end of the day, this principles that Dale Carnegie talks about is so important in today's society that it's crazy that how they are not using it as a influential for future generation or whatnot. So but yeah, it's really really one of my favorite book at all times.
Okay, wonderful. Well, there you go. That's awesome. Anybody else have any thoughts as we overall thoughts before we kind of get started?
Hey, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Ruth.
I joined the program yesterday, so I'm not sure what you guys are talking about.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let me kind of give an introduction. I'm glad that you spoke up. I love that. So every other month or so, we do about 5 a year. We do these book club meetings. And basically, we decide on a book beforehand. And everyone kind of reads the book or reads a review of the book or just shows up and wants to just talk about the book or learn about the book. And they're usually self-help books, books about leadership, about personal development, just things that I know that our students will be really interested in doing or in reading and applying in their life, because you're all, high-level professionals. You're doing incredible things in the world. And so there's just these elements of communication skills and other skills that are just really helpful in your development. So when you're coming into Pronunciation Pro, you're obviously someone who likes personal development.
Yeah.
You're working to be your very best self. And so we found that as professionals, you're all doing such a great job and being able to you're striving for that excellence. And so it's a fun way for us to get together to discuss a book, that's about development, and get all of your feedback and create this community. Okay. And so we've been doing this. This is our 20th book that we've been doing over the years. And so it's a really great format for our students, just learn another way to learn and grow. Okay. And a great way to practice communication skills. in real live context.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, so that's what we're doing
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
So I'm glad
Thank
you're here.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, when do we declare the name of next book?
Oh, okay. We'll get to that at the end, Shankar.
Okay.
You can give your recommendations, and actually, you can even put them in the chat box now if you want to. Okay. All right. So the book that you guys all chose, many of you recommended this, was How to Win Friends and Influence People. So it was interesting reading this again. I'd read it several years ago, many years ago, back in college. And reading it again, it made me realize how old it was because the language is very old in terms of like, I think it was first published in the 1930s. And so the examples that they give and some of the language that they give is very much characteristic of that time. And so you see how language evolves over time, and some of the vocabulary that we use evolves over time when you read something like this in a context of current day. So that was interesting, and some of the examples that they use were very, it's kind of a good history lesson of what things were like in the 30s, and some of the examples that were given. So that was kind of interesting. Anybody have any kind of thoughts about that as they were reading? So, because it's interesting to me as I was thinking about it in terms of like for you all having English as a second language and reading this in context, I was really interested in how you guys all kind of thought about the language being used.
Yeah, I would say that it was some of the words that they use was very deep to a point where like I had to research what the word actually means. And so because like you said, it's written in the 1930s and it's specifically in that time frame. And because of that, you know, the wordings and how they phrase things are way different than how we use it now. And so it was, but you know, the context of it is very still profound today. So I call it ageless. And so,
Yes.
but there are some words that I actually have to research, many words that I'm like, whoa, I was like, what does that mean? And so, it was really cool to just not only I'm reading the book, but also learn new words that I can use maybe still in the modern day. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like you said, it's kind of ageless, that timeless. Those principles are timeless, and so it's interesting to see how so much time has passed, but so many of these concepts are just as relevant now as they were then.
Hello?
Adamu, did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so first of all, this is my first time to participate in this type of meeting. So I didn't read the book, but I know the author there. I know that the book is much more about like personal development, something like that.
Yeah, so even if you haven't read it today, we're going to go through a lot of these concepts, and so you'll learn a lot from just the discussion here, and kind of the outline that I've prepared here. So good. Somebody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Add on something. I read this book many years ago in Russian language. It translated in Russian.
Yeah.
So I didn't know English, but Dale Carnegie was my ideal. I tried to follow his structure, how to communicate with people. And I tried to use, and I used to teach my students how to make friends. And one best thing he says about, if you want to make friends, first of all, you have to learn that person's name and then call with his name. This is the best thing you can make good influence.
Yeah, good impression.
So, and the second thing, Shelly, learn about that person a lot.
Sorry, hold on. Would you guys all mute if you're not, here, I'm gonna go ahead and mute that. Okay.
Okay, so
sorry, go ahead.
I followed the strategy when I was in the United States and I came to for the interview. First thing, what I did was I learned about the history of the school. So what's going on in the school, and then I learned
at Dale Carnegie school.
Yeah, no, Dale Carnegie. He's like, if you want to, he's saying like, if you want to get a job, first thing you have to investigate about this learn that position and about this like kind of office, that this kind of things, and then you have to know the history of this job you're going to work with. And then I learned when I came for the interview to the school, I learned the history of the school. How many students do they have? What population? And then what's problem do they have? And then I followed this strategy, and it helped me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm planning to read in this book in English. I haven't read in English. I don't have
okay.
Yeah, I read in Russian, and I really love Dale Carnegie.
That's wonderful.
He's awesome.
Well, good. You bring up the kind of the main, I think the biggest point, and he says this several times through the book. If you take one thing away from this book, it's that developing that skill of being able to see from the other person's point of view. Okay. So when you see from the other person's point of view, you're going to have much more success in making friends, influence people, being able to kind of get the thing that both you and the other person are wanting. And so when you're talking about that, when you're, going for a job interview or you're going into a situation, learning as much as you can about the other person or organization so that you can start seeing things from that point of view and what would be important for them is a great skill and a great technique in being successful in accomplishing your goal.
I love one part when he says, "Why do we love our dogs?"
Yes.
Remember?
Go ahead and explain that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, "Why do we love our dogs? They never say they love us, but they show us how they love. When I come home, he like running to me, wiggling his tails and telling and showing he loves me, and I cannot get rid of it. I love him, even though he doesn't say anything. It's like same thing with people. He's like comparing something like that, right?
Yeah, and he talks about, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but the people want to feel, their greatest desire is to feel important. And who does a better job of making you feel important than a dog, right?
Yeah,
that affection of like, you are the most important person in the world to me right now.
Yeah, we have to show our feelings, not just telling. Just they need to feel our respect, something like that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll kind of dive into that, but I love that introduction and how it personally has affected you and created that change in you, because that testimony or that that testimonial of your own experience of how this book has helped you really motivates us and creates that desire to learn more. When we hear that it has helped so many people, we really want to know more and be able to apply that ourselves. One thing to mention. Oh, go ahead. Was someone?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Because in the book, Dale mentioned about classes and all that. Like, because you guys are in the States, is this class still ongoing? Are there still classes like this that Dale? I mean, not him, but like his.
Yeah.
Good
question, Arjan. Do you know?
Yeah, I actually took a class for a Dale Carnegie course. They do have it, but you have to inquire where you at, depending on where you at. Because I live in the U.S., so yeah. I mean, there's actually
I would go there.
So Dale Carnegie, I'm sure that there's some online classes. It might be more of like a virtual course, kind of like this, that they do now instead of in person as much. But yeah, I would kind of research that if that's more something that, because like we always say, it's in the doing, right? You can read a book, but it's in the doing and the experiencing of it that's actually going to change you. And so that's actually one thing as we're kind of going through this today. I want to encourage you to share, to participate, to write notes, to do what you can to make this an experience. Okay, because that experience is what's going to really kind of solidify these ideas for you. And I am going to ask at the end kind of one takeaway of something that you're going to go and do with it. So I want you to really be mindful of what you can do, you know, what you're going to take and do, because that doing makes all the difference. Another thing as we get started is, I don't know about the rest of you, but there were many moments in this book and reading it where I started feeling uncomfortable, as far as like embarrassed that I have made some mistakes that I have, you know, embarrassment or shame or kind of that guilt and those uncomfortable feelings of like, oh, I totally have a long list of examples of how I've done this wrong in my life. And even while I was reading it, there were some things that kind of were blaring to me that I was currently doing. And so if that is part of your experience today or while you were reading it, it's completely normal and natural. And all that means, because whenever I start feeling uncomfortable like that when I'm reading a book and I start kind of feeling that, like I want to run away, you know, that's when I know I need to lean into it more, because those are the areas of growth for me. It's essentially highlighting areas. It's like, hey, Annie, you need to work on this, you know? And so that is my clue to say, okay, this is something to lean into and to really practice, because, you know, there's some areas here to improve on. Okay. And that's with self-development books and personal development that really is a big thing. If you're okay with being uncomfortable and people showing you where you're doing it wrong, you're going to be the most successful. Because if you can kind of lean into that and really explore that and practice it, even, you know, in that discomfort, you're going to be incredibly successful in overcoming those challenges and weaknesses and improving and growing and in becoming your very best. Okay. All right. So I liked this from Dale Carnegie, where he's talking, when dealing with people, let us remember, we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We are dealing with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudices and motivated by pride and vanity. And we like to believe that all of us are creatures of logic, that we're only using that frontal lobe of our brain, and that we are not emotional about any of the decisions that we're making. But it's just not true for ourselves and for everybody else. And the more that we kind of understand that, and the more that we can kind of accept that and just love our humanity in that way, I think the more successful we'll be in using these and applying these in a very sincere and genuine way. That I think, you know, what we call it now is emotional intelligence and social intelligence. Those are the kind of the phrases that you'll hear most often right now. Is emotional intelligence and social intelligence is the skills that we're going to be talking about today. And those emotional and social intelligence, like Arjan was saying, like we don't really teach these as much as we really should. And, you know, like in school and things, but I think it's gaining more ground, especially in corporate America. There are a lot of these, a lot more of these type of like people skills, type of programs. Okay. All right. So there were four kind of main areas or parts to this book. The first was called Fundamental Techniques in Handling People. Okay. The second is 6 Ways to Make People Like You. Okay. The third is How to Win People to Your Way of Thinking. And the fourth was How to Change People Without Offending or Creating Resentment. So I've kind of listed some of those areas where, like the areas that we're going to cover. And so we'll kind of add in kind of I'll have you add in personal examples or things that came up as you were reading this that you can add to it, but we'll kind of go through a few of those 4 sections. Okay. So the first one, fundamental techniques in handling people. The first one was don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Okay. And he says, he talks about, you know, anyone can criticize, condemn, or complain, but it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. So this is really that emotional intelligence. When you have that capacity to really control your own emotion and be able to recognize that there's a space, and we talk about a lot in pro mindset, there's a space between stimulus and response, okay? Stimulus, something happens, and response, we act about it, you know? So say something, someone says something offensive, we snap back at them, okay? There's a space in between there where we have our thoughts about the situation and we create meaning about the situation. And the more that we can gain kind of control and awareness in that space, the more we're going to be successful in this, okay? So it's that, you know, he talks about it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. It's in that space between stimulus and response that we're going to examine and think of our own thoughts and start thinking in terms of their thoughts. How is the other person thinking about this? And the more that we can kind of get into that mindset of the other person, the more self-control we're going to have in these situations, the more we're going to be able to be in a place of forgiveness and understanding, okay? And the less we will probably be, you know, to criticize or condemn, okay? The second is give honest and sincere appreciation, all right? This one, he says, the only way to get a person to do what you want them to do, let's see, sorry, I have a few things in my way. Okay. Okay, so it says the only way to get a person to do anything is by giving them what they want. So in the book, they give an example of when you go fishing, I'm not going to give them ice cream, even though that is something that I want and I love and would be a delicious treat for me. But when I go fishing, I'm going to put some worms on there. It is not something that sounds appealing to me, but when thinking in terms of the fish, that's exactly what they're going to want. Okay, and I like that example because it allows me to think in terms of like, okay, I am very consumed with my own brain and my own wants and what I'm interested in. But let's shift that. Okay, what are they gonna want? And this is, you know, and what do most people want? And this is what Dale Carnegie talks about. They want to feel important. Okay, and that is such a big thing. People want to feel important. And how do we make people feel important? By appreciation and encouragement. Okay, this is the most true when I am parenting and working with my kids, that I've found to be the most helpful in parenting and helping my kids. And I feel like because I've practiced it so much in parenting, it's a lot easier for me with my employees and people that I'm working with. Is I've learned to, if I want my kids to do anything, I've got to love on them and make them feel good and important and wonderful about themselves. And then I'm going to ask for what I want. And then I'm going to, you know, they're way more eager and willing to do what I want them to do when they're filled. We call it filling their bucket, their love bucket. But tell me about kind of your experiences with this. What are your kind of thoughts here?
Yeah, for me, so when you said give honest and sincere appreciation, so that's true. And how to make people feel important is by appreciating them and encouraging them. But sometimes I find myself in a situation where I don't really have a word to appreciate someone because what the person is doing is not that good. So I would like to appreciate him, I would like to encourage him, but I don't even find a way to do that. So what am I going to do? Am I going to be hypocrite by saying something that I don't really feel in my heart? So that's the biggest issue.
Okay, good. I'm going to open that up to the rest of you. What do you guys think?
So I would say Dale Carnegie says, can I add on something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dale Carnegie says, he gives some example with the salesman, remember? And then he was very rude, mean, and he was looking at that person to find something good on him. And he found out that his hat is so good and it's so fancy. And he's like, I like your hat. And that person started smiling at him. And I think this is like a different way to understand when we want to be appreciated, we have to find something good on that person to encourage that person to do, to be loyal to you, something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't really remember, it was many years ago I read, but I remember the situation with the salesman.
Mm-hmm. And here's something that's always helped me, or not always. I think I really struggled with that with certain people of like, oh, they're just a difficult person. They are a difficult person. And then I came across a podcast actually that was talking about lovability, someone's ability to be loved. Okay. And basically what it said was everyone is lovable. Everyone's lovable in some way. I mean, even Adolf Hitler, his troops loved him. His mom loved him. Like everyone is lovable, meaning that there's someone that loves them, okay? And they have the ability to be loved. What happens is when we're having a hard time loving someone or appreciating someone, it's not because of them, it's because our ability to appreciate them, okay? So I like taking the responsibility for that because then it allows me to take that power back and say, okay, there is something about this person to be appreciated because I'm sure there's people in their life that really appreciate that person, okay? So it's my ability to appreciate them that is in question here, okay? So then I challenge myself and I say, okay, challenge accepted. How can I appreciate this person more? And what is it that they're doing well or right? And what is it that I can sincerely compliment them for and show my appreciation for? And it might take some work, certainly. But if it's coming out of a place of insincerity, forget about it, okay? We have to dig in and we have to really think through and even shifting our thoughts of like, what would it feel like to be like this person? Okay. What is it like to be in this person's shoes and to be either messing some things up so much or to be failing so much or to be, disappointing people so often? Why is that? Like, what is it that's happening in their life that is causing them to act in that way? Are they, how are they feeling? Okay. And I think that question really kind of brings up this whole appreciation versus flattery, and Dale Carnegie really talks about this and is very adamant that we understand the difference. Okay. So what is the difference between appreciation versus flattery, you guys?
Yeah. So may I ask a question here?
Yeah, go ahead, Millie.
Yeah, I was looking for the button, but I didn't find it. Yeah, anyway. So basically my question is about how we express appreciation to people in a more natural way. So my experience, I would say because I work in the technology world, basically we have a lot of contributors. They're doing some really great stuff. For example, such as writing up a blog or for example, write up a program which is very useful for some projects. So every time I meet some people who is a contributor, I always want to show, you're really doing a great job and it's amazing, something like that. But if I say so, usually people's response is like, yeah, thank you, like this. But I'm looking into, a way to appreciate people in a more natural way. And you're not feeling, too awkward, because if you say too much, even though it's by nature, I really want to get something off my chest to say, I really appreciate it. But how to make people feel comfortable if I do so?
Yeah, and I think that some people are going to be uncomfortable no matter how you word it, because they're getting praise and recognition, and some people have a hard time with that. Some people, it's like they want to be like, oh, no, it's nothing. You know, they want to push that compliment away. But I believe that we just keep giving it, you know, whether they feel comfortable with it or not. If we're giving from a sincere place, it's kind of like giving a gift. It's like, okay, I'm going to someone, I'm going to give you a gift. They might like be like, no, you don't have to give me anything, you know, but for me, it's like, no, I want to give you this gift. And I want, you know, I hope that you will receive it. And just because they don't want to accept it doesn't mean I'm not going to still want to give it. Okay. So I'm going to keep giving the gift of praise. And what I think that is a good way to do it naturally is, first, it has to come from a very sincere place. Okay. Which it sounds like it is coming from a very sincere place, that you want to give them that praise. And the more specific you get, so like say they write an article, they blog, something like that, being able to praise it and be like, I loved in this part where you said this, that really stood out to me, or that really, you know, affected me. And being able to give specific praise, not just like, oh, it was great, because anybody can say that. Yeah. But when you give a specific, it means, oh, she really actually read my article and she really did actually like it. And this is a way that it helped change her perspective, or it helped her really, and that I think is going to be more well received than just general praise.
Yeah, that helps.
That help?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and can I add on?
Yeah, go ahead.
You were talking about giving more than taking. I mean, I just want to add that for the next book, I would recommend reading the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. It talks about how successful people, people who give more are more successful than people that take more. So that is something that I want to add. And I feel like the difference between appreciation and flattery is that, like you said, is about sincerity. It's like when it comes to flattery, it's like you want to say something nice just so that you can get something out of the person. Like you want to, it's not sincere. It's like you want something out back. It's all about taking and then just giving. Whereas appreciation, you compliment someone, but you don't always expect something back, but you genuinely want that person to know that this is what you like about that person, or this is what you like about what the person has done. So I think that is the difference. It's about giving more than taking, and being sincere about it. So
yes, I like that description of it.
Yeah, actually I was asking about, about how to do it in a natural way. I didn't really expect any feedback from a person. But because also it's a way to create more reactivity, in a conversation as well. You talk on some topics, maybe it's something you're working on or will be working on in the future. So basically it's also a way, because you appreciate this person because he's working on something that will be very helpful to the community, and maybe it's also something you will be working on. So it's also a way to get his view, even it's not mentioned in an article or in anything else he has worked on, but he kind of can share also more views about the future, about his point of view on this technology. So basically it's a way to build connections with this person, also a way to get his view about technology in the future as well. I usually do this, during the conference. With my job, I think I really love what I'm doing now, because I got opportunity to, to be part of the conference, to present in the conference and talk to a person. So which is really good. So it's just a way how to build a connection, how to build, my understanding towards technology as well. Yeah.
Yeah, all of these are all about connection. It's how do we connect with people? Because like we were saying at the beginning, we're all emotional creatures, as much as we think we're very logical, we're emotional. And so many of these techniques is just like, how do we connect on an emotional level with people? And that's what creates that friendship, that connection, is when we can kind of tap into that emotional side. And that's what you're experiencing through that sincerity of wanting to get to know somebody. It's that sincere connection. Okay, so yeah, just like you guys were saying, appreciation, it's recognition and enjoyment of the good qualities of someone or something. And it's sincere. It comes from a genuine place of caring about the other person. Okay, whereas flattery, like you guys are saying, excessive or insincere praise given especially to further one's own interest. So if it's out of like, I want to get something out of this person, and it's insincere, it's going to be flattery. And honestly, that just is cheap, and it's detected. People can really read that if you're not sincere about it. So as much as you want to, you think that you're doing a good job of it, and just, unless it's coming from a sincere place, there's no amount of words or strategy that you can have to make that feel sincere to the other person. Okay. All right. So we've talked about kind of criticism, honest and sincere appreciation, arousing the other person, and eager want. So this is kind of a old school way of saying that, like, just stimulate their wants. What are they really wanting? And the only way to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. So an example that came to mind when I was thinking about this is my son, who is, now in junior high. He's 12 years old, kind of going on to 13. And we had a really hard time getting him to go to sleep at night. He wanted to keep staying up late with us and things like that. And so my husband, he goes, that when you sleep, you grow, like you get taller. And that's when, so the more sleep you have, the more likely you are to grow. And all of a sudden he was excited about going to bed early because it was tapping into his want. He tapped into that, like, oh, my son is really wanting to get bigger. He's wanting to grow taller. He's wanting to grow some muscle. And the only way to do that is sleep. And so it was a win-win there, And when you align your desires with someone else's, and if those line up, we have a win-win, situation. So, and that's a Stephen Covey phrase, win-win or no deal. It's like when you go into a situation, if your wants and desires can align with the other person's, great, move forward with it. If it doesn't, then that's, something that probably shouldn't happen. Okay. Anybody have any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah. Can I just
go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Abby.
Yeah. Can I just add something, right?
Yeah.
And what you said before is the same as well, because I remember before when I was a kid, and I never used to eat my greens. And my parents told me, if you eat all your greens, you're gonna be stronger. And all of a sudden, I'm eating my greens as if it was no tomorrow. So what you said about your son growing because he sleeps, it's the same for me as well. Right?
Exactly, that's a classic example. So, classic example. Yeah, and when we think about it, I like looking at terms of children's examples because it's like a really easy way to see it. It's very obvious. But it's the same thing for us as adults.
So you're breaking up. You're breaking up. I'm not able to.
Am I breaking up to everyone else?
You're good on my end.
Okay.
Yeah, you're breaking up. Yeah. It could be my video.
Yeah, Abby, it might be on your end because it sounds like everyone else is fine.
I'm going to turn it off. Okay. It could just be my video.
Okay.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect now. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it's not as obvious in adults, but it's the same situation when we line up those wants and we really kind of identify, what does this person really want? What are they really getting at, looking to get out of this? And that's that point of view. We have to shift that point of view to their wants. And when we start talking to their wants, that's when we're going to really find, success in that. And when we can identify, hey, what they want is also what I'm wanting. Okay, so how can I phrase this in their perspective? Okay, and I want you to really think about that because that is really a big deal. That makes all of the difference. If you're in sales or we're all in sales. be honest, we're all in the sales industry because we're all trying to sell something. We either are selling ourselves, we're either selling our ideas, we're selling a product, we're all in sales all day long with other people, things like that. And that number one trick is if we can really get into the minds of other person and identify that want and identify, is this a want match? What I call a want match, or what they wanting, what I'm wanting, then we have something there. Okay. If there, so this is from Henry Ford's words. If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own. Okay. So Henry Ford is, I guess, the one that Dale Carnegie keeps quoting here. Okay. So moving on to the next part, 6 ways to make people like you. Okay. Become genuinely interested in other people. And we kind of talked about this. How do we get genuinely interested in other people? You know, like, how do you guys do it? What kind of thoughts lead to you? So say you're going somewhere, you're meeting new people. Like, what thoughts are you thinking that's like, ooh, I want to get to know, you know, I'm going to really want to get to know this person.
Basically, just ask the person to talk about themselves.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like, tell me about yourself. And that's when you show that you're genuinely interested in the other person. Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's how I do it.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's what he talks about kind of later on. We'll talk about that, is when we can get them talking about what they're interested in, then it's like, oh, okay, that's, you know.
And for me, maybe, yeah, you get the person to.
Oh, darn it, Abby, we're breaking. We're not able to hear you.
Yeah, I'm breaking up. Yeah. I was gonna say is you get the person to talk about themselves, and you listen, and also you ask questions, and maybe, and that person, the more the person opens up, the more you show them that you're listening, because you're responding to their questions as well, to the responses, the answers. Everything, right?
I love that you say you ask them about yourself and then you listen. I think that's a part that some, you know, we forget sometimes, is like, okay, I'm going to ask them about them. And then, you know what? They are the number one person in my life right now. You know, they are the most important person in my world right now. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not, you know, dropping in on another conversation over here. I'm not dividing my attention. But that is the most important person. I'm going to be listening, and I'm going to be asking questions because I want to know more.
One thing I'll add, Annie, besides everyone else have said, kind of like with Ken and Abby, I would say you have to be open to actually meeting the person, because you know, when you meet a new person or new people, you have to be open to actually, you know, to meet the person, because if you don't, then you're probably not going to be interested in them. So I think, you know, willingness to open yourself to generally, you know, like I said, you know, to be interested in other people. And through that, you know, you just ask questions about themselves, because generally people are interested in about, you know, the best topic that we have is ourselves. But when you ask people about themselves, you know, this is how you create an interesting person about yourself, because you just asking question, but yet at the same time you're listening because you're interested about the other person's life. And so being open to meeting people or the person that you get introduced to.
Absolutely. And it only, even just like a tangible you know, recommendation for all of us is, when you're going into a situation, just even reciting the thoughts in your mind of like, I have something to learn from everyone. I'm interested in seeing who I can meet today, you know, and kind of almost having a challenge to it is like, I'm going to leave this setting with a new friend. You know, I'm going to leave this setting knowing more than I did before I came. You know, find something that is motivating to you and go into that situation reciting that thought and practicing that thought. And that's what's really going to open you up to that idea. So I like that idea. You have to open yourself up So what do you do to open yourself up? You have purposeful thoughts that create that opening. Okay. So that's a tangible to say, you know, if you're like, well, how do I do that? That's how you do that. You know, find some thoughts of like, what is going to motivate me? What specific thoughts can I practice before going in here that's going to motivate me to open up and to learn more about the people here? Okay. And I love that. For me, I love that idea is everyone I meet knows something that I don't, you know, and just figuring out what is that? What is that, you know, everyone is going to know something that I don't. Okay. So second, they talk about smile. And in this part, he talks a lot about just how our physical creates our mental and emotional. And a lot of times when we smile, you know, when we smile or the way that we hold ourselves really does impact the way we show up. And that smile can be felt. And he gave a lot of examples of people on the phone doing sales over the phone and how they were encouraged to smile, not because anybody could see it, because you can't see that over the phone, but they could feel it. Isn't that interesting that like through the phone, you could feel if someone was smiling or not?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
That's very, very good, because your any smiles that you put out there is very contagious. And so, and when you smile through the phone, people could generally feel that. And like you said, because I mean, if I do this to everyone, it generally mirrors everyone's faces, because, you know, that's why I'm smiling is because you're smiling, Annie. So it really mirrors the person, seriously. So, but a smile just lets you know that you're friendly. So.
That you're open. I think that does create that openness. When you're smiling, it says, hey, I'm open to meeting you. I'm open to knowing you, to whatever interaction we have. And it's very inviting for people.
Sure.
Awesome.
So also,
go ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
Smiling is a way to attract people. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yes, I was saying that smiling is also a way to attract people to you, because in my experience, people who smile a lot attract many people compared to those who doesn't at all.
Yeah, that's a very obvious, very like if someone's just like, you know, walking around with this grump face, it's like a repellent. You're like, I'm not going to talk to them. Yeah. Who else was? There was someone else that was one.
I'd also add that smiling brings the best out of people. So maybe a person is angry and you smile at them, you just bring the best side of them out, and it will be an interesting conversation.
Yes. And I love that he gives examples of like people who are just obviously looking like they've had a hard day, and doing a smile, you know, having a smile and showing appreciation, or saying their name, or, you know, giving them some kind of a compliment, how much that, you know, that challenge that he kind of had of like, I'm just going to try this and see how it goes, and how fun it was for him to kind of play that game and see how he could lift other people through that.
I just want to add one more thing. And I remember this was a story I read before, and it was a woman. She was having a bad day, and all of a sudden she was walking through the park, and all of a sudden she said a stranger smiled at her and lifted her up, and so it made her day. So sometimes even in strangers, right, it can be like, it can make a difference to someone's life, in someone's day. For example, and she gave the perfect example of her being sad, and all of a sudden some stranger in the park, he smiled at her, and all of a sudden, so
exactly,
right,
that's great. So one story from the book, and this actually kind of goes back to the praise and recognition. Everybody know who Stevie Wonder is? So Stevie Wonder is a musician. If you don't know, he's blind, but he's a beautiful musician, very talented musician. So in the book, they gave this example of how when Stevie Wonder was in grade school, he's blind, okay? And the teacher said that they said there was a mouse that was loose in the classroom. And so the teacher said, Stevie, you have the best hearing, you know, out of any of us. I want you to track down this mouse. Okay. I want you to track down this mouse and see if you can find it. And he said that recognition, that praise for his keen sense of hearing was what kind of launched him into really developing that skill and leading him into music and leading into developing that in the way that he had. And so I bring that up because it's just like we have no idea what a smile or you know, some kind of recognition can do for someone in their life, that it's like, oh, I didn't realize that was, you know, something that I had, or a talent or a skill or a good trait that I had, and it's been recognized. And so I wonder, it must be true, or it might be true, and it could be something that you know, can really influence people. So to me, I'm like, just spread it everywhere. Let's do as much of that praise and recognition. There's no harm in it. You can only do good there. With the smile too, Dale Carnegie brought up kind of from this concept of like, everything begins in our minds, you know, that our thoughts are really the beginning of everything. And Shakespeare brought it even back all the way to Shakespeare, where he says, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And I love that it's, you know, tracked all the way back to Shakespeare, of just that mindfulness of just like, it's really our interpretation of things that are really making things the way that they are, you know? So, and somehow he tied that into the smile piece, but I couldn't remember exactly how. Okay, so the next one was remember people's names, and that is, you know, something that we talked about. And in the book, he actually has like this 6-part strategy to remember people's names. So I'm just gonna go through it real quick in case if you want like a tangible, how do I do that? Okay, because that really, you know, because just the power in using people's names, he really made that a big deal. So if you don't hear it clearly, ask them to repeat it, okay? For unusual names, ask the spelling, okay? It's another way of reinforcing. Repeat the name several times in conversation. Associate the name with people's features, expressions, or general appearance. So kind of making a connection in your mind, and then writing it down later so you can visualize it. I do it in Rudin phonetics. When I hear someone's name, I tend to like spell it out in Rudin phonetics so that I can kind of get that visual. But that's kind of a strategy. If that's the one thing that you want to take away today is remembering people's names more. There you go. All right, and we've kind of talked about this before, but just being a good listener, encourage others to talk about themselves, and then, you know, encourage them to talk about themselves and then listen. You know, let's really be a good listener and practice that listening skill. About in terms of the other person's interests, and not like, hey, what are you interested in? Oh yeah, I'm interested in that too. Here's what I do with that. It's like, oh yeah, I'm interested in that too. Tell me more of what you know, what you're saying here, or what your interest is. But just like keep deflecting, you know, keep going back to them. And I have been in situations where this, you know, my conversational partner is doing this. I can kind of tell that that's what they're doing, is that like they keep kind of asking more and more questions about me, and I'll ask them about them, and then they'll deflect it and ask about me again. And it's a little frustrating because it's like, okay, we're both playing the same game here. I get what's happening here. So I think it is okay to just, Ruth is laughing. But she's obviously been in that situation. Have you been in that situation, Ruth?
It's a win-win situation.
Yes, I have been. I was talking to my friend the other day, and actually it's my cousin, so we don't keep in touch as much, but she heard that I relocated, so she was asking so many questions about me. And I also wanted to find some things about her, but she wasn't responding as well as I wanted to know. So it was a bit frustrating. Yeah.
And you could even call that out and just say, hey, you keep asking me about me, but I want to know about you. Like, what about you? And you can even use that to kind of like diffuse the situation if you're just kind of like, hey, enough about me, you know.
Sure.
Let me hear more about you, you know. And that can be, you know, a good way of handling that in like a light-hearted way. But yeah, it definitely happens.
So me too. I've kind of experienced this situation like 3 years ago. I mean, I'm still experiencing the same situation. You know, like people are asking, where are you from? What are you doing here in the US? So why did you come here? So why did you leave your home country all the time? You know?
Yeah.
And then I've come to discover that American like to ask questions a lot. Where are you from? All the time. So when I meet people, you know, they want to know more about me. You know, they want to know where I'm coming from. I mean, they need to know the details of my life.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's really frustrating.
Yeah. So what's a way that you could kind of shift that conversation?
I mean, you know, the best way for me to shift that situation is by asking the same question. So this is what I'm doing now. So if someone asks me, where are you from? I know I'm from Oklahoma. Where are you from originally? No, I'm from Oklahoma. How come? You know, you too, where are you from? You say, no, I'm from California. No, where are you from originally? Unless you are a Native American, you came from somewhere else. Oh, I understand. So my sister were from Germany. So I'm originally from Germany. Okay, me, I'm originally from Cameroon.
I like that. It kind of makes it light and fun, you know, that back and forth. That's great, because I hear that from our students all the time, that they're like, I am so tired of telling people where I'm from. And so if you kind of say, you know, shifting it back of like, where are you from? No, but where are you originally from? Like, you know, maybe it's your ancestors, but just kind of getting that, or just being able to say, I'm always talking about myself, you know, and where I'm from. I want to know more about you, you know, or whatever it is. You know, if you're in that situation where it just keeps coming back to you and you want to shift it, find, you know, you can kind of find a fun way to shift that back. And I don't think people are going to mind it at all if you're wanting to know more about them.
And I heard that question the most when I was driving for Uber last year. You know, every passenger I pick up, I mean, almost all, they were asking, where am I from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and just being able to take it of just like, they're interested in getting to know me. It's a conversation starter, you know. They're feeling, maybe from their perspective, they're just feeling uncomfortable. They're not sure what to talk to this random stranger about, right?
Sure.
So, hey, here's something that we can kind of talk about. But yeah, practicing that shifting of just saying, hey, what, I'd love to know more about where you're going or what you're doing.
Yeah, and then it was a way for me to also open the conversation.
Yeah,
you know.
I think it's great.
And
I like how you're viewing it there in more of a positive, because I know that some students just take it and they're like, oh, that's so frustrating. But if you can view it in a positive and see how it can be very helpful for you in getting to know people, that's an advantage that you have. Okay, good. Okay, so Dale says you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years and trying to get other people interested in you. Okay, I thought that was a pretty direct way, great way of looking at it. It's just like, here, look at all the things that I can do, or what I'm doing, versus let's turn that interest to you. Okay, let's see. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. We've talked about this a lot, but when that person, especially when you're listening intently, when that person truly is like the most important thing in your world right then, they're going to feel that. And they can feel that, and just asking questions and saying, hey, you are most important. I'm going to give you praise. I'm going to give you recognition, and I'm going to do it sincerely, coming from a very sincere place. There's such power in that. Oh, so they gave some specific phrases, and I thought that this would be helpful for maybe some of you, is like, you know, starting something like, I'm sorry to bother you, or would you mind, or would you please, or, you know, using thank you, in that it shows a respect. You know, there's a respect there. It's just like, would you mind? I'm sorry to bother you, you know, kind of like putting them, really kind of showing that respect before you even talk, is setting the stage to letting them know, hey, you're important, you know, you're respected, you're valued. I don't want to bother you, but, you know, here's, and you try that in like a restaurant, you know, with your waiter or your server or whatever, and see what the kind of response you get, instead of like, hey, I need this. The words we use matter, and the way that we say it matters. Okay. Okay, how to win your way, let's see. How to win people to your way of thinking. I know we're top of the hour. How do you guys want to go from here? Do you want to keep going? Do you guys have to leave? Kind of give me an idea of where you are.
For me, I don't mind. I can stay. I have nothing on, so for me.
Okay, because I can stay for a little while longer if you guys are all up for it. If you guys have to leave, then don't feel like you're hurting my feelings or anything by going. Okay, but we'll kind of roll through some of these things. Okay, the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. And so he talks about just kind of that arguing versus, and I don't think we have to agree with everything everyone's saying, but arguing is a different matter, you know? So he's saying, let's really kind of avoid that, because you may win the argument, kind of like you may win the battle, but did you win the war? You know, did you really get what you were wanting, you know, out of that, or did you just win that argument? Did you really win over that person, or did you just win your pride? Okay, so just kind of being mindful of that if you're one to kind of want to win. And it's interesting that this is one of the examples where I got uncomfortable with this book, is, and because I recognized my own, is I like to be right. And I was having a conversation, you know, I was having this interaction via text with my sister, and I had said something and she corrected me on it, and I was like, no, that's not what I meant. And, you know, and I could feel myself getting really defensive about it. And I didn't like that correction from her. And so, and it was kind of at the same time, I was listening to the book during that same time. And I was like, oh my goodness, look at my pride. Look at how my ego just like snapped in there and was like, oh no, you're not going to correct me. Okay. So I think that kind of that complaint or kind of telling people when they're wrong, I think we're going to be getting to that, but show respect for the other person's opinion. Never say you're wrong. Okay. So really just kind of being aware of that is something that could, you know, the other person will most likely take offense to. But being able to tactfully, you know, find ways to indirectly kind of look at, or, oh, I don't, you know, you probably didn't mean to say this way, or maybe I don't understand it as well as you do, or, you know, there's ways to do it where you kind of bring that other person up of like, you probably know more about this than I do, but here's my understanding. Am I wrong, you know, with that? And it might be, you know, so when we prop that person up first before, and to resolve that misunderstanding or that area, then it puts people in a situation of like, oh, you know, of understanding versus defensiveness. And I think that is a very important skill to practice. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and directly. That goes such a long way. If any of you are married, I think that you know, and you are married or have a partner or whatever, that sure does go a long way, doesn't it? You know, if you're wrong in a situation, just admit it quickly. And this is one that I've had to years and years of had to practice because I like to be right. Anybody have any kind of thoughts on some of these?
I have, it's true. The first one, if you can try and avoid an argument in the first place, you've already won. Yeah, and the second one is show respect to your to the other person's opinion. Yeah. So if you're wrong, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to say you're wrong sometimes because I know people, right? And sometimes if they're wrong, it's difficult for them to admit. And I think, according to number 2, it's if you can admit you're wrong, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and even phrases like I might be wrong on this, or I'm often wrong, or being able to recognize your own humanity and your own ability, your own tendency to be wrong. And oh man, I was really off on this one, and I recognize how off I was. Those are phrases can really diffuse a situation.
In my situation, not all the time works for me. When you're wrong, you admit it quickly. Once, for example, sometimes when I admit that I was wrong, my husband, he's like taking advantage of it, and next time he's like, remember, you admitted you were wrong.
Yeah. That can happen, right? Yes. Okay, so some of these others begin in a friendly way, kind of think of that like, how do I move into this in a kind and friendly way? How can I move into this helping them feel important, helping them feel respected as I move into this? Get the other person to say yes immediately. So that kind of goes into a lot of those sales strategies of like when you can get people into a yes mode. And I thought it was interesting. He was talking about kind of even our physiology, the body, our chemistry in our body, and what happens when we say no. There's kind of this block off, and there's a chemical reaction in our bodies. But when we say yes, there's a different reaction that our body has. And so when we get people into a no in a defensive situation, it really is a challenge to then break down that wall. But if we can kind of go into it with a friendly way and helping them kind of finding that place of agreement, what am I looking for? Kind of like that, where a place that we do agree, say you're going into a situation where we're like, oh, we disagree in so many areas, being able to find that common place where you can agree on some things and starting there so that we can get kind of some initial yeses or an openness to it before we kind of move into some of those areas that disagree. That's a great strategy, and being able to diffuse that. And let the other person do most of the talking. We've kind of talked about that a lot. Let the other person feel that the ideas is his or her, okay? And I don't want you to kind of get overwhelmed with this. I want you to just kind of find a couple of things that you feel like, oh, these are things that I can go and do. So don't feel like you have to figure out all of these all at once. What will be the most helpful today is just saying, ooh, there's one I need to practice. There's one I'm going to go and figure out. Okay. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. We've talked about that a lot. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. Again, when we get into that other person's point of view, we're going to be a lot more sympathetic to like where they're coming from and why they feel the way they do. And the thought that I like to practice is everyone's doing the best that they know, or everyone's doing the best that they can with what they've been given and the viewpoint that they're in. So when we have that thought, we can be way more sympathetic to where people are. Everyone's just doing their best with what they have. Mm-hmm. Okay. Appeal to the nobler motives. And, he talks about dramatize your ideas. I didn't really agree. I get the idea of it, but it sounded more sensational than I kind of love to do. And throw down a challenge. I liked that one. When we're wanting to motivate people, sometimes it takes a good challenge to kind of motivate people to act in the way that we're thinking. All right. And I'm just going to, because of time, I'm just going to kind of run through these. I want you to be kind of thinking in your mind, does something stand out as something that maybe I can kind of draw from? But I think that what we've talked about already has so much weight and you can do so much with what we've already done that I think that, the rest of this we can scan through. And if you want to go through, later, that's just fine. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. So this is kind of being a leader, how to change people without offending or creating resentment. So a lot of it is kind of some similar concepts that we've talked about. But as a leader, when you're leading an organization, leading a group of people, leading your family, whatever it might be, here are just some ideas that can help. So begin with praise and honest appreciation. Okay, when people are feeling built up, you can kind of take deposits out because they're filled. They're already coming from a place of fullness. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. So instead of just calling them out, hey, right face, it's like, kind of finding indirect ways. He gave a lot of great examples of this in the book. And, I'm having a hard time kind of drawing this out, but one thing I'll talk about a little bit later, I have another slide on that, but talk about your own mistakes before criticizing other people. This really diffuses the situation. It's kind of like apologizing, like we were talking about before, kind of admitting your own mistakes really helps diffuse the situation. When we talk about our own mistakes before we criticize other people or before we give feedback, then that really kind of can help that person be more open to the feedback. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Having this one, my husband and I, it's constant, like where if I'm giving suggestions, he's a lot more open to it, but I'm like, you know what you should do? He does not like that. So I have to practice that skill with him. Let the other person save face. We don't want to be criticizing someone in front of other people. We don't want to be, creating that situation where they feel that embarrassment. If that feedback can be done in private, in a constructive way in private. And praise this slightest improvement and praise that improvement often. I cut off, right? Let's see. Give other person, this is one of those, like the language is a little bit different than we would use now. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. So really kind of saying, you know what, you are this really great person. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to, live up to, they're going to be, and if anybody has something to say, go ahead and say it. Because I know that I can't see like hands or anything like that. So if you have something to add, yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you. I'm Fernando. Yeah. I am enjoying a lot this presentation. It's a very valuable content and I appreciate it. Is it possible to you to send us this presentation?
Yeah, so what I'll do on the Pronunciation Pro website is I'll post the recording of this and then I'll do a download in that section of the PDF of all of the slides.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful for everyone. Good idea. Okay, good. Yeah, giving people a reputation to live up to. I do this a lot with my kids where I kind of try and paint the picture of what they can be. And then we kind of, and build them up in that way to help them kind of see what that reputation of what they can be or who I see them as. And I think that as a leader, and that just carries then into my employees. It's just like the more I can kind of let them know of how I see them, in this elevated way, the more that likely they are to act in that elevated way.
Can I add one thing, Annie?
Yeah, go ahead.
People usually rise up to the level of someone's expectation. And what I love about how you treat your student is basically you give us something to live up to where you basically expect us to basically be a better person, but also putting confidence in us that actually we can do way more than what we can do. And so because of that, I think that's why we all are all here, because of the expectation and the repetition that you put us to live up to. So that was something that I was just thinking about as you were sharing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Arjan. Yeah, and I think, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have a question here. So so a few slides away, is all these ideas, do you think is still valid, to a person, live at our age? Sorry to say that, because I can see over the last few years, and even at 10 years, people evolve as well. So do you think all this advice, people now, we are living a life really fast pacing, and everyone's very nervous, stressful every day, and also think things very fast, and a lot of people, also some people, they don't care about each other as well. So do you think all those suggestions, because we learn so much stuff, and we are doing a lot of stuff as well, but do you think people, because they don't have the same mindset with you, and maybe, take a benefit of that as well? To, what I mean? Yeah. Because I read through another book, by Aidan Graham. I think it's called Giver and Taker, something like a give and take. So it's a famous book as well. So which is why, thinking about, all those rules, because we doing a lot of contributions, we sacrifice, but people, they don't have any, the same mindset as you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to throw that question back to you. What do you think? Do you think that these principles and kind of the things that we've been talking about, do you think that they apply today?
Me, I think it applies to me sometimes, because I want to do it some way, how do you say, I don't want to really frame myself, in my life. So doing things I think is right, and if it's wrong, people will have some reflection as well, so I can correct myself. So in my life, I'm a people fan kind of person. I take a lot of feedback from my colleagues, and this is also feedback from my colleagues as well, because I take a lot of feedback and I improve myself. So for me, it's a growth mindset. But sometimes also it happens to me is doing some, especially in my job, is because my ex-manager gave me a feedback is what you did is great, okay, it's good, but it's just sometimes, because you're not maximizing your impact in your job. Basically means, because we have a goal, like a sales goal, for example, you want to sell how much money, for example. But the reality is, what I'm doing is to help people, and they increase also their performance. But for myself, maybe I have a zero rewards, from that part as well, which is why my ex-manager recommend a new book to me. It's Give and Take. So that's why I want to discuss about this as well.
So it's interesting to me, because I feel like, because you were saying, I'm open to feedback, I don't seem to have as much of a problem with this myself. And I would say that all of you are probably in this category where you are way better at receiving feedback than the majority of the population. Because you do have this growth mindset. You are the type of people who are striving for excellence. You're learning, you're growing, you're working towards being better. You're good at being able to take that criticism and shift it in a way that's empowering, instead of the opposite. And you've developed this in yourself, and it might be that generationally we're getting better at that. But you still are going to find a lot of people in the camp of who are going to struggle with that if it's not worded in a specific way, or not worded in a gentle way. Okay, so it's interesting kind of how you say that, because I think that is true, that there is a generational situation here where we might not be as sensitive as we were before. But I think that you guys all are kind of at that higher level already in being willing to look at areas to improve. And so this, you might not need as much of that, you know, specific phrasing to be able to be okay with it. Does that kind of help?
It does
a little bit,
but not entirely, because I think this can be a complicated you know, topic to discuss. My opinion is to live our way, because we're learning, you know, from different books. We increase how to say, the power of our mindfulness as well. So but also we need to strong our heart, because sometimes it's not good to care too much about others' opinion. We just need to find the right balance to take a feedback, and the other way not take everything to your heart as well. So we just need to find that balance. It's also like a physical a way that we said is when, you know, if you find out yourself you're wrong and admit it, I think it's not a problem to say I'm wrong, sorry for that. You know, it's never late to say any apology. But I think the question here is really about how we realize we were wrong. You know, that's a problem. For me, it's also, you know, because I think it's self-recognition. I need to review myself, you know, over a period of time, get my feedback from myself as well, because I think how myself see myself is really important, you know, rather than take other feedback. You know, this feedback need to go first, then they'll take a balance, you know, other feedback, and how you see through this feedback from other people's angle.
And I love that. I love that you're, you know, building off of some of these core principles, but then generationally saying, okay, this might not be necessary in this exact way anymore. You know, now we're being raised in this, you know, certain mindset that's different, and here's how it's different. So I think that the things that you're bringing to the table are very valuable and important to kind of shift this to a more modern, you know, age. I did notice as I was kind of looking through is that there is now a how to win friends and influence people in the digital age. And so there, it probably would be more along the lines of what you're talking about, is that there's a shift, you know, because generationally it's going to change. There's got to be these updates of how these things apply and how much they apply and all that kind of stuff. So I think you definitely have something there.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely need to update ourselves continuously, and also important to manage all those updates as well. Is that a right update? Do you need to roll back anything else? Yeah. So it's very, very important to manage your mindset and your, you know, everything in your life as well, how you see yourself in a different way.
Exactly. Great. Okay, so just real quick, make the other person happy about doing the things that you suggested. So here's an example that I liked, Melanie, from the feedback you gave. It says your boss or someone had given you feedback, and then you said, but, you know, here's something you're doing great, but here's something that you need to improve on. And for you, you were probably fine with that, or just like, oh yeah, that's fine. When we're giving feedback, and just kind of for all of us to be mindful of, when we're giving feedback or criticism, you know, being able to start with praise and then say and instead of but. Because once we say but, it's like it discredits everything all the praise that we just got, you know, but when we say and, then it's just like it's all one and the same. So it's a very just small grammatical thing, but can kind of help shift that, you know, like you've done a great job and there's this one area to improve. So you'll notice that I do this a lot in the study group, is when I'm listening to somebody, you know, read or speak, and I'm going to give them feedback, I'm going to give them criticism basically about their pronunciation. A lot of times I'll start with all the things that they're doing well, and here's something to improve. You know, here's something you can also do. And I've found that is way more well received, that they're more motivated to do what I suggest for them to do, and what I suggest for you guys to do when it's, hey, I see your improvement, and I genuinely do. I'll see your improvement. I see what you're doing well, and here's how you can keep growing. It's like we're on the same team, you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Arjun.
Now, I was just gonna say there's actually a story about in the book that Dale Carnegie explained about a guy who was a dancer, and he's been dancing for 20 years. And basically, you know, the teacher told him, I was like, oh, you've been doing it wrong, criticism. Yeah. But the second teacher that taught him to sort of, hey, here's what I see and what, you know, the things that you're doing right, you're natural, and then kind of but here's something that you can improve on. And then the first time he actually started dancing again was he quit because he got criticized, and, you know, it's like, well, who wants to, you know, start over? But the second teacher told him that he just need to improve on some of those little things, and because of that, he continued on dancing. So
I loved that example because the second teacher made him feel like it was easy.
Right.
And oh my gosh, the power of feeling like something's easy versus something's hard, and our motivation to do it.
Right.
I think that that's so interesting, and the way that we think about that in terms of like, what if we thought making money was easy? What if we thought that, you know, being successful in our career, what if we thought speaking English was easy?
Right.
You know, like what makes us think that it's hard, or who has, you know, what thoughts have we kind of created that make this a hard thing? And can we shift those to think, oh, it's actually easy?
Yeah. Well, what I love about your course is you make it as simple for us to where we can, you know, we can do it instead of, you know, something is so hard, so complicated that so hard for us to do it. So with your guidance and your team's guidance, you're making it easier for us to make sure that we're on the right path. But when you're a teacher who just criticized and basically, you know, like, this is how you're supposed to do it, and that's the only way, then you're not really seeing the perspective of, you know, us, or the students, to where it's easier to give up rather than to figure out, you know, what it is that we need to improve on. And so, but yeah, I just remember that the story, it's like, oh, that makes sense, because, you know, how many times in our life that we kind of just stopped because we just got criticized rather than figuring things out that actually what worked for us.
Exactly.
So hopefully
that's wonderful.
And
go ahead, Abby.
I'm sorry. I just want to add one more thing about, because did you know that the actor Ryan Gosling, he almost quit acting because when he first started, his first role was Hercules. And for some reason, the director didn't like him very much. And he made it very clear that he didn't want him for the role. And after some time, when the show finally ended, he quit. He wanted to quit acting. And it was his best friend that told him not to quit. And now you know where Ryan Gosling is. He's become quite a famous movie star. But if you read his history, he almost wanted to quit because there was no feedback. It wasn't just a feedback. It was the person just on and on, no telling him, okay, this is good, this is that. And he almost quit. All right.
Yeah. It can make such a big difference, kind of the feedback that we get. Okay, so just kind of wrapping it up, we've kind of gone quite a long time today. So if there's one secret success, let's go back to that, Henry Ford. It's their ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle, as well as from our own. So if we're gonna take anything from today, please let it be that, okay? And hopefully there's another just like tangible takeaway. So real quick, I mean, like one sentence, kind of real quick, I want to bring that accountability here. But one sentence real quick, what is your one takeaway for me today of one thing that you're like, I'm going to go and do this, kind of making it tangible. Okay, Melanie, go ahead first.
For me, it's very useful to know is when we given a feedback, not saying bad, because that is, however, you can do better, you need to do better. But I say, and it's just because I given a feedback, that can be something you need to improve. But from people's point of view, they will feel much more comfortable because, I need to improve, I need to grow. myself grow out of it, you know, all my old habits, I will become better tomorrow. So, but you know, I feel
so you're
more
gonna switch
comfortable,
that
more happy with
but
that.
to and. Yeah, I love that, to give that feedback. But to and, that's a good tangible thing to practice. Start with praise and feedback. Excellent, yeah. Melanie, thank you. Fernando, do you have something? Welcome back.
So sorry. I think the most important takeaway for myself is to try to see the things in the other's eyes. So I think to be more empathetic, I think it's the most. And starting from that point, I think it can be, everything can change, because it's not in terms of my point of view, it's in terms of theirs. No matter if I want to something them to do, but if I try to understand them first, I will be more able to do that, to influence them effectively.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
It.
I love that, Fernando. Thank you.
You.
All right, Arjan, how about you?
Yeah, I would say the same thing as Fernando said. You know, that's the one, he referenced it a lot of times in the book. And he said, you know, if there's one thing, the one thing that you can take away from this book is really truly putting yourself in others person, putting yourself in others person point of view, so that you can understand their perspective. And that's pretty much, you know, that's all you have done as far as, you know, teaching us, because you, even though you're not, you're native, you know, you're from here, but you put your shoes in our perspectives, because and when you do this, you truly can understand on how you can help people. And so and that's something that I truly kind of like, I was reminded of the, you know, as I was listening to the book, to make sure that I always put myself in other person's point of view, so that way I don't, you know, criticize, condemn, complain about them. Because if I understand the perspective, it will be way much more easier to handle the situation. So
that's great. And that's why I like these situations where I can talk with you and get your ideas and perspective, because it does help me understand more of the struggles, or what you're going through, or what stands out to you. And the more, you know, the more we can do that to the people we're trying to serve, the more we'll be able to get into that point of view, instead of making assumptions, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you again for the book club.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Okay, Abby, go ahead.
I'm just going to say it's best to be able to understand that person. I'm just going to, can you come back to me?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Ruth, we're going to come back. We're going to go to you. Yeah, we'll come back to you, Abby.
Okay, I really thank you for allowing me to be here. And even if I've not read the book, I've understood and learned a lot. So thank you for that. And what stood out to me is the fact that you should give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. And I think it's nice for us to deal with people who are pleasant and are easy to deal with. So that's a very good thing. And now that I think about it, my mom used it on us so much. So I was thinking, was she tricking us? But
she's just wise, a wise mother.
Yeah, but we turned out great. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I think in her mind's eye, she could probably see who you could be, you know, that potential that you have. And I think that's some, you know, a gift a lot of mothers have, is being able to see that in their children.
Yeah, thank you.
That's wonderful. Good. Okay, Ken.
Mine is like Arjan's and Fernando's one, which is to try to put yourself in the shoes of the other person.
Good.
I think that is, I mean, among all the other principles that Dale wants me to learn from, I mean, I find others are quite easy to do. The hardest one is this one, because we have a tendency to want to like put ourselves first. So like whenever we want to get other people to do what we want, we always like to come prepared with what we want to say and what we want to argue and our points and all that. But when we try to do it the other way, we try to understand the other person first, it's easier to get the person to do what we want. And one of the example I can think of is like asking for an increase in your salary. It's like, it's very normal to just go to your boss and just say, oh, I deserve this, I've done this and done that. That's why I should get a raise. But like, if you try to think of your boss perspective, like what your boss can gain from giving you an increase in salary, like, or you can say like, you done this, and if you increase, I will definitely bring in more business and all that. So that will give him a more motivation and a one of him doing what you want in the end. So like, this is something I'm trying to work on, which is the trying to get throw in the other shoes. Yeah,
a very applicable situation, you know, to be able to use. It's very tangible situation, just like your employer. What does your employer want? And really getting into that mindset. That's wonderful, Ken. Thank you. Okay, good. Let's see, Shankar.
Yeah, I read this book many years ago, but I don't remember many of the things, but I have observations on one point, that is give honest and sincere appreciation. I observe that I have a tendency to follow this or use this with the people I meet once a while, but there is a tendency to forget or ignore this while dealing with the people I meet every day, like at work or in the family.
Yes.
So since it's a reinforcing kind of thing, I will be more alert on this from now.
I love that.
Secondly, and secondly, I learned that a smile can be a conversation starter, particularly with the strangers.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Shankar. Great. Okay, let's see. Yen, do you have a takeaway?
Hello, Annie. I'm listening to you.
Yeah. Good.
The meetings is very interesting. I learned a lot from you and the others. Yeah, I read that book in my mother language, Vietnam, a long time ago, and I also had some time to review it. And one key takeaway is that if you want to change people's behavior, so we have to change our behavior. So yes, that's very useful for me, because in order to win the others people's support and help, I have to be with them. It means that I have to be think about the benefit, because if I think about my benefit, so it's not a win-win situation. Yeah.
Very nice.
One thing I would like to add is that the book was published in the Great Depression. However, it was a happy book.
Yes, that's a good point. It was written at a very difficult time in history, yet it was a very encouraging, empowering book. Yes, good point. Thank you, Yen. Appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, Daisy. What was your takeaway here?
Hey, Annie, I think she just sent a message about she had to go.
Oh, she has to go. Oh, darn it. I missed her. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you go back to the last the slide before this, so that I can write down the quote by Henry Ford?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then Ather, you there?
Yeah, it's Athar. Okay. I think.
Okay.
Thanks. I think one of my greatest takeaways is obviously empathy, being able to review what the other person is feeling at the time. It's very hard to figure that out. And I think the other aspect is, of course, to be able to take criticism in a more a profound manner than we do. So I think these two aspects are very important.
Wonderful.
From this subject.
Wonderful. And those two things are definitely skills to practice, right? We kind of think that sometimes they just come naturally to people and either you have it or you don't. But I think it's important to know that anybody who has it, it's probably because they've developed that empathy or that compassion or that ability to take criticism. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, let me see, run through here. Okay, I think Abby, you think you're our last one here.
Yeah. It was only because I was going to say the answer Ken said, and Ken said it, and then Arjun said it as well. So it would
no, you can't keep like repeating it. It's fine.
Answer, yeah. Absolutely.
that's really, I'm glad you're repeating it because that's the one thing I'm hoping that everyone does take away from this. Go ahead.
And so I'm just going to say, if you can align your want with someone else's want, you can get the job done as well. So if someone, like you said before about wanting something, and if like wanting something, you can get it done. And the second one, I'm going to say, if you can smile, it can, what's it called? It could bring a tense situation to, it can ease the situation. If you can smile, it can bring like ease the situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And again, we're talking about social intelligence. It's that interaction with people, you know, and that's what we're really talking about here. So, so I'm glad that you guys took the time to share your key takeaways because it's in the actual like speaking it that there's such power. It's in the doing that there's such power. That's how you're going to change the pattern of what you're doing now is by doing. Okay. Just by kind of passively thinking about it doesn't create the change, but doing it does. So really taking the time to say, how am I going to apply this today? How am I going to apply this right away is going to have the biggest impact in your life. So I'm really glad to do that. And so thank you so much for everyone for coming. I'm glad you're here and stuck with me for all this time. So it does help me to kind of hear from you and be able to get an idea of what you are thinking and feeling. And so wonderful to be with you today. Thank you. So you guys can all unmute and say bye to everyone. And we'll do it again. We'll do it again in January. I kind of take off the holiday months, but we'll do it again in January. Okay.
Oh, so long.
No, so long. Does somebody else want? Hey, here's a suggestion. Does anybody else want to host it?
Ooh, that's a very challenging.
Because Arjan, I might recommend you here.
I don't know.
If you want to host it, we could do it through the holidays.
If Arjan hosts it, I will join.
What is it?
If Arjan hosts it, I will join.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, there you go. Ooh.
I'll think about it.
You think about it?
I'll think about it. Because you do such a good job of making it simple. And,
well, the thing is that if I'm going to bring something to you, I always want to make sure that I, spend some good time on it, which means it takes a lot of time for me to do it well. So not that you have to do it exactly like me, but yeah, if you want to host, we would come. I would love to. I would love it. Okay, so we'll give you some time to think about it, and we'll let you know. But go ahead, and if anybody else wants to as well, I would gladly accept it. So write down in the comments any suggestions you have or recommendations for the next book club, and yeah, we'll go from there. Okay, so Ken's give and take, excellent.
Yeah, I have the book. I haven't read it yet, so it's on the guest list. So
okay, so Arjan is thinking that one too. Okay, so let me take a look at that and see another one. Okay, Poor Dad, Rich Dad. Yeah, that's an older classic one too. I haven't read that in a long time. I'd have to look at that again.
The modern one is Cash Flow Quadrant by same author. Yeah.
Oh,
same.
Okay.
Yeah, same. It's more like a modern one because the Rich Dad Poor Dad is always classic, but the cash flow quadrant, he actually go in more in details of what kind of like the story behind that. And so.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Okay, good. All right. Thanks, everyone. Your voice is important and needs to be heard. If you're ready to speak English clearly and with greater confidence, I invite you to start your free 7-day trial at pronunciationpro.com.